Crowds at condominium showrooms have become a familiar weekend sight in Singapore. But that dream home will now cost a little more. Those purchasing higher value properties will now have to pay more buyer's stamp duty or BSD. The increased tax of 5% kicks in at $1.5 million. And for the value in excess of $3 million, the tax will be 6%. Higher BSD for non-residential properties was also announced.
So on the residential side, for upgraders, there will definitely be some sting. It's more like a thorn in the side of the salaried worker here who now needs to fork out more.
For a $10 million property, the additional tax will be $155,000. But at that price point, market watchers say it's unlikely to deter the ultra-high net worth, including foreign buyers.
I think if you look at the previous few rounds of cooling measures, it may have slowed down the interest temporarily. But typically, I think people will look at the property market as a package deal, meaning that there are a lot of attractive features to being here in Singapore and investing in the property market here that can offset some of the initial adjustment pains from paying higher buyer's stamp duty, for instance.
You pay for the price of a safe haven, and I would say good things don't come cheap.
Together with another hike in taxes on luxury cars and an increase in tobacco taxes, the new taxes are expected to raise around $800 million of revenue. Experts believe such measures won't affect Singapore's position as an international wealth hub, but it is a fine balancing act.
Now, when you look at the impact of this to a wealthy individual, I would say it's not as significant as the kind of wealth taxes you see in other countries, like inheritance taxes and so on.
So I think it's always a relative competitive issue. You want to raise wealth taxes, but not to the extent that you effectively kill the golden goose. So it's a very fine, delicate balancing act.
Another consideration for the current government is to ensure its books are balanced after 3 years of deficits to fund COVID-19 measures. Experts say that means more taxes may be on the table in the future to close that gap. The government expects spending to exceed 20% of GDP by FY 2030, mainly to deal with rising healthcare costs in a rapidly aging society.
I think all the options are on the table, very frankly. I wouldn't rule any of them out, given that the medium-term projections of our spending and revenue seems to suggest that there is going to be a shortfall that's not insignificant. Of course, they could consider raising some of the income taxes. So whether it's corporate or personal income tax per se. And even if you look at GST, for instance, even when we get to 9% in January 2024, it's still relatively low if you compare to Australia or New Zealand or even Japan or South Korea. So I would not say it's impossible that further down the road, of course, that there could be further increases in tax rates.
And of course, when we talk about GST increase, people will look at it in a very negative way, right? People will say, oh, it's a regressive tax. But actually, if you think about it from a Singapore perspective, right, GST is actually a progressive tax because the lower income households, right, they actually have a permanent relief from the effects of GST through GST vouchers and through other support mechanisms. So which means that when GST rates go up, the more well-off who actually consume more actually end up paying more GST.
Another source of additional revenue could be some of the world's largest corporations. From 2025, the government will implement Pillar 2 of BEPS, a global move to fight tax avoidance. A domestic top-up tax will be implemented to top up MNE's effective tax rate in Singapore to 15%.
So if you don't pay 15%, then what will happen is that there is the the agreement amongst the members, right? That then the top-up tax, right? If Singapore doesn't implement our local minimum effective tax rate, if Singapore doesn't collect, we lose it to the foreign country.
There are concerns that this will reduce Singapore's attractiveness as an investment destination by taking tax incentives out of the equation. But tax experts say companies will look at the larger package Singapore offers.
At the end of the day, it's about cost of doing business. If, up to now or up to the implementation of Pillar 2, these companies had the business cost savings, via a smaller tax bill. Now, without that, then, where can the that savings come from to just help businesses, right? So in a way, the topic of Singapore's attractiveness, yes, it's definitely at discussion tables.
And sometimes it's like a race to the bottom, right? Am I providing a better tax incentive than another country? So with global minimum tax, you're basically taking tax out of the equation, and we are competing on non-tax factors, which is actually, I think, is favorable to Singapore because we have the strong fundamentals, right? We have a very good infrastructure. We have the talent pool, right? We have stability. And on top of that, safety, I think is a very, very big consideration. Now, what is important is that Singapore continue this path, continue to be competitive. We need to continue to upscale the skills of the employees, because at the end of the day, when foreign investors come into Singapore, they are looking for certain skill sets. They need the talent.